I think the Army is potentially taking a step back to be able to take a few steps forward. In a way, I think
you're gonna have to explain that one a bit.
Okay, let's draw this line first. I think that the SIG Spear is an absolutely lousy civilian rifle. However, so recently, Josh and I, we had discussed the big SIG Spear, and part of that, of course, is inevitable that we brought up the M7 and the adaption of the M7, which I talked about some stuff about the military adaption process, and I don't want to misconstrue things. I feel like it's easily misconstrued to where I would be saying that the Army had the wisdom of adopting something that was far more modular for its long-term use. Whereas in reality, I think it's more apt to say that the Army went on this boondoggle to do a weapons program for something that could penetrate 600-meter body armor. And I think down the road they're going to run into munition supply issues. And luckily for them, the XM7 or the M7 project yielded a product that's a lot easier to caliber convert than, let's say, some of the other large frame projects out there. And I'll play that right now. We'll get back to it after the actual discussion.
Well, hello there. You must have caught us at the battalion field headquarters as we were about to break for lunch. Now, we're trying to not have the MREs. I hear the boys in the field are quite fond of them. I hope you're enjoying the show thus far. Shows like this, they're brought to you by Slate Black Industries. And more importantly, we have the support from the patrons of Patreon and Outtro. Now, that's true. This group of men and women, they support us intellectually, financially, but most importantly, emotionally. So today, I'd like to invite you, come, join us, become one of us. Together, we could plan to conquer the world of firearms technology. But if you cannot, that's all right. We completely understand. We'd be just as happy to hear from you in the comments section below. Well, without further ado, we'll leave you back to it.
From a layman perspective, which is sort of my position on it, you know that I am an AR aficionado. I love the AR platform, right? I'm super into it. I love shooting them. I think they're the best thing since sliced bread. Mm-hmm. When I look at the decision to change over for the next gen squad weapon here into this platform, I find myself asking the question, why? Why go from something that seems to be one of the most shootable, accurate, easily usable firearms into this other configuration? And in my brain, again, this is sort of thinking about this in lay terms, is it a response to the war that we had just finished fighting in Afghanistan, where we had lots of extended distance engagements, and during things like fob defense and that sort of engagement, or out on mission where you're on these mountainsides having to shoot across valleys and into these extreme extended distance engagements. Is it that? And we're going backwards and going, well, we wish we had this more DMR, heavier hitting, better projectile for that environment? Or is it looking forward into let's say a near peer type of environment where you got to be able to punch through Russian armor or Chinese armor or something like that, somebody that the U.S. sees as a potential adversary in a geopolitical sense in the future. I mean, what's your take on this?
Okay, so what you're describing is something that we always talk about in the U.S. military. We're going to be fighting the next war with the weapons from the last war. You see this time after time after time. Look at the weapons that were brought into World War II. At the time of filming, this was pretty close to D-Day. What, you're looking at Thompson's BARs? I mean, those are trench... That was trench warfare developed stuff. We barely even cracked into snipers by the time we were going into World War II. We were fighting that war initially with the weapons from the last war. The M1 carbine, in my opinion, was the biggest advancement for World War II. And initially, it was still plagued with a lot of question marks. Well, I take that back. Sorry. I should say the M1 Garand and the M1 carbine. So let's look at what we're doing right here, right? We're thinking about, is a SIG Spear or the M7 used to fight either the long range or the short range? I think, in the words of some logisticians I've heard in the past, I think the Army is potentially taking a step back to be able to take a few steps forward. In a way, I think
you're gonna have to explain that one a bit.
Okay, let's draw this line first. I think that the SIG Spear is an absolutely lousy civilian rifle. However, for the Army adaptation, it may have some use case to it. In a sense, what I'm saying is taking one step back to redraw the canvas that we're painting on in order to adapt to different situations. The SIG Spear is a lot easily configurable than what we currently have in the inventory. I think the CSAS and the SAS are great at their jobs, but they're very specialized items. The SIG Spear, if you look at it as a battle rifle base, you could swap it out to the new cartridge, 6.8, or you could end up using the 7.62 cartridge. I wonder if the future of this system is going to be a 7.62 equipped SIG Spear going forward, because 308 can do 80% of what you want a 6.5 by 51, what that cartridge could do, right? Especially within a manageable or reasonable distance. And in that sense, if people are then like extrapolating from that, hey, Henry, do you mean that the SIG Spear that we see right here is going to be closer to the final destination for the M7 project? Possibly. Because look at the M1 Garand. You know, the M1 Garand, the initial adaptation, it was supposed to be using a 270 cartridge. That was the original cartridge that it was slotted for. But of course, ultimately, what was it chambered in? 30-06.
30-odd, yeah.
Why? Because we had a lot of them.
Okay.
A lot.
Makes sense.
And
logistics.
Yes.
Logistics.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. So right now, if you're looking at the cartridge disposition for the US, the way we work, we have a lot of stockpiles around the world. I'm not just talking about Jimbo stockpiling a couple crates of 308. No, I'm talking about rounds in the multiple millions in certain locations around the world. SOCOM then has their own stockpile in different places around the world. That is how we logistically forward load stuff into the field. It doesn't matter if you adopt this new wonder weapon if you don't have the ammunition to support it in the field. Now, if you adopt this particular weapon, right? You want something that's a little bit more flexible to be able to do other things. You adopt it to be able to use both 308 or you adopt it to be able to use 6.8, but be able to drop down to 308, which the barrel change on these things are fairly easy. And the gas system's tethered to the barrel. And if you want to make any changes to that, it's just you make it to the gas system on the barrel to swap it out. So if it's over-gassed, if the feedback is it's over-gassed, we need a Mark II version of this an A2 version of this that is like a little slightly under-gassed, then you could do a retrofit program for it. The idea here, though, you could still swap the components out to use the ammunition stock that is pre-positioned around the world. I think the SIG Spear is currently in a really strong place to be retrofitted back to 7.62 to use that pre-positioned stock around the world, what we currently have, that is also interchangeable with NATO and uses a standardized magazine, unlike the CSAS that uses the HK-only magazines. This uses the M110 standard magazine that we have a lot of under sniper programs. Now, part of that, if you look at what the Marines did with the M27 IAR, they adopted that initially. They had to write a justification for that. Why did they need an M27 IAR? Well, the SAW has its issues, right? But also the M27 IAR has ammunition and magazine commonality with the weapon systems around. It was supposed to be in sort of like an RPK role. It was in a support role. But then once it got in the inventory, they started like, oh, no, this is really good. We need more IARs. We need to plus up IARs per unit. And now you see Marines that are the entire unit is just M27 IARs. So, I mean, to civilians, this is a really perverse way of getting stuff into the system. They got the actual NSN of the item adopted into the military logistics system, and they were able to then procure more with justifications down the road. But for them to say, no, we just want this as is to substitute our rifles, you then have to write a justification that is, how does this compare to the current rifle, and why does that justification make sense? It doesn't. It is very difficult to beat the AR-15 in that sense. But if you say the AR-15 is not a support weapon role, and we need to substitute it in a support weapon role, then you can. Now, let's drop back to the SIG Spear. The justification here is, well, we need to penetrate armor at longer distances. And then people are like, do you? Well, look, there's China and Russia. And that gives you a decent justification set to adopt this new thing into the system. Which, by the way, you can swap the barrel very easily to adjust it to use current ammunition stock. And all of a sudden, now you have an item that has an NSN number, that could go on an A2 and A3 retrofit program down the road, and you have a new, more modular system that you could put into your soldiers' hands. So I think ultimately, I'm wondering if this is going to be like the reverse of what we see the Marines. Like right now, the Army is saying this is going to be general issue, right? Maybe at the end, it's a reverse of that in a sense that it substitutes out the SAS and the CSAS to a certain extent.
Interesting.
Because if you're able to fix whatever barrel thing is going on in the front, and I'm 90% confident, like if it's a barrel attachment issue, you could fix that with retrofit items. I'm confident that that's something that could be retrofitted into a more marksman-y role, and then have it shoot whatever cartridge is available for the logistics supply. That's my thought on this. Obviously, those are my ideas in looking at historically. We adopted the M1 Garand, but we had to refit it to the ammunition that we had. Looking at the ammunition strategy that we've taken around the world and how we pre-position ammunition stock around the world. Because I was looking at this. It's going to take decades to get 7.6251 purged out. On top of that, you're talking about NATO allies using common cartridges. Right. So, like, this is a massive purge into it. And that's going to be even more difficult to say, hey, NATO country, we dragged you into 308. Surprise, we're not going to be using this anymore. So, I think that's going to be a hard sale. But if you're looking at it, in a sense that this is a way of pulling this into the logistics system and then having longevity through modularity, it makes sense to a certain extent for the U.S. military. Now, whatever bureaucratic loops you have to do to pull something like that through, we may be witnessing that right now. But I think, again, echoing back to this, as a civilian weapon, I would choose a SCAR over this. I would even choose the HKMR762 over this. Or an AR-10 of any of the plethora builds out there over this particular thing. Now, however, for the military, that type of flexibility in ammunition, that type of flexibility in long-term service capability and upgradability, that may be something that is more valuable to the military than the current performance of the rifle.
Makes sense. So to summarize some of that, again, back into some lay terms here, is getting the weapon adopted with basically some sort of getting it into the armory in some capacity allows you much more flexibility once you're in the door, as opposed to trying to get it in the first place. So
Right.
Get whatever it is in from a business and operating perspective, right? Get whatever you can in, and then from there you can work with various units, various mission sets, what people need in XYZ configuration, to then retrofit and create different variations of that unit since it's already been pseudo-adopted
Right.
or truly adopted. Interesting.
That's a strength that's been a trend and a strength of the Army in the past, is starting to adopt more and more modular items. Look at Mali, just like equipment wise. Look at Mali, like during the adaptation, the initial adaptation process. You'd probably say, well, you can't really. It doesn't function with as many components as Alice gear. That's true. But the more stuff you make for it, as long as it's adopted, then that's great. And for this one, on top of that, this is a technically peacetime adaptation. So it's even more difficult than justifying it for a wartime use.
So makes sense, I think. So again, I would echo your comments. Like, it doesn't exactly feel to me like the best overall configuration or system as it currently stands today. But Henry, if we think back to 2006 and we look at like the onset of the SCAR program, although we're fond of the SCAR here on this channel today, there's plenty of people who were part of that program initially who absolutely hate the SCAR. And think that it was and still is potentially a gigantic mess of an overall program.
For good
right?
reason. For good reason.
Right. And so it's one of these things where it's like in hindsight and retrospect, you can look at some of these things and find key pieces of value that you might not see in the moment. I look at this move away from the AR platform, or like the suggestion that we would be moving away from the AR platform. And then I look at some of the more active global conflicts going on right now, and I'm like, I don't know, in a current Russian, Ukrainian war that's devolved in many cases to like urban or trench warfare, it doesn't seem to me, with lots of mechanized use, drone use, etc., it doesn't seem to me like being able to punch through armor at 600 or 800 is like something that's going to matter at all. But that could be completely backwards to whatever actual battlefield ultimately transpires should that type of a conflict ever actually exist. So
you can't predict the future. It's all
hypotheticals,
yeah.
right?
That's the whole point. It's about flexibility. But what we're looking at here, this is my conjecture, this is my thought, this is my view. Now I'm an outsider looking in with some insider experience, is we could be looking at a government procurement process, which is a really perverse way of saying, how does a government bend rules to pull stuff that they really want in? That's basically it. It's how do you write the justifications for a system to exist? Now, the other part, the elephant in the room on this, is how much involvement SIG has in this procurement process. That is even like far beyond, because like even if you're in, you may not even know some of the details on what are the. I'm trying to be nice to say, is there any foul play going on? I don't know.
I think as somebody who works in business and does RFPs for a living, it is naive to think that all of the players in the game don't have some hands in some pockets in some pots trying to help influence an outcome. It would be negligent for a business to not try to do that and try to get every advantage. Everybody does that in all forms of business. You're trying to influence the outcome in a positive way for your business. So I can't imagine, and again, this is just speaking just purely in generalities, I can't imagine a world where people are winning major government contracts without being intimately connected and involved and part of conversations and building relationships with key stakeholders on those projects. I can't imagine that it happens without that, especially when you see companies winning like multiple contracts all at the same time.
Yeah, look, I think, as far as this whole shoot, like, it started as a simple shoot on the SIG Spear, and I think a lot of viewers probably tuned in thinking, oh, how are they going to drag this thing because it's kind of, like, we hate SIG. I get it. But the answer is rarely as simple as we hate this gun as is. It's this is honestly one of the more nuanced discussions that we've had on a particular platform. And this is why I find it really interesting. Not particularly because it outperforms the SCAR, it outperforms the M110. Nah, this potentially goes into much deeper military procurement relationships and stuff like that. And that to me is the interesting part of it.
And when you're talking about this within the context of the civilian world, I'll just go back and ask the question of, like, would you buy the 1.0 version of a thing that came out? Like, if you, again, look back to early 2000s, like, is the SCAR something at that point in time that you would have wanted to get without the aftermarket support that exists today, without the additional corrections and development changes that have been made to it? Like, also probably not. So when Henry and I are talking about, this doesn't exactly feel great in the hands of, like, just a civilian shooter, that's in my mind where we're coming from on it. 10, 15 years from now, it may be a completely different ball game, and this may be a go-to, right?
Now,
it could be completely different, right?
That said, though, this is Gen 3 of the MCX system.
That's true, but
to
first
your
large
point,
frame, I think, right?
But to your point, we're in Houston, and I'll wrap this up with this. When I used to work some oil and gas projects here in Houston, and we are an oil and gas city, there was a famous saying in the North Sea, I want to be the first to be second in line. And that's, think of Yahoo versus Google, right? Yahoo was very first in many things, but Google succeeded it in many ways.
Yeah.
By learning from some of the mistakes that they had. To your point, do you want to be the first in line to buy a SIG Spear, or do you want to be the first to be second in line to buy the SIG Spear that's got a lot of these things fixed?
Yeah, makes sense. All right, y'all. We appreciate you tuning in for this long-form discussion. If you want to hear more on Henry's sort of feedback on logistics, development, and all the rest, let us know in the comments below. And maybe we'll do a breakaway session on things like this, things in the procurement world in general, which both Henry and I have ample experience in. And again, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Do all the good YouTube stuff, like, comment, subscribe, check us out on Patreon, hop into the private Discord, and until next time, we'll see you on the range.
Now, so this is the point where I tell you about why I think the M7 or the XM7 is stupid. You may be surprised that I don't necessarily think the MCX or the M7 itself is completely stupid. Well, it's pretty stupid, but relative to the cartridge, I think there's less utility towards that cartridge in the long term. Especially considering that you have to follow up with supply. And so even if you take away the actual weapon system and you're just looking at the munition supply, I think that is going to be the biggest problem the Army is going to have to solve, because this is not a joint service adoption. Now, so one thing I meant to add to this, I'm kind of curious who wrote the 600 meter armor pen capability as one of the requirements, and what kind of wargaming or battlefield projections that came from. If it did come from something, I would be really curious knowing what we know nowadays and not during the NGSW program, I would be really curious if that particular requirement would still be held in high regards. Knowing how Ukraine has been fought, knowing how China has been building up its capabilities, I would be really curious if that would still be there. Because what we often come back to look at is the juice worth the squeeze? Can you make something that penetrates armor at 600? Yes. But at what cost? Is the juice worth the squeeze? What other types of capabilities, what other types of requirements were also added to it? And were some of those base requirements things that we've universally seen in the battlefield nowadays? All of these are questions that I have. I do not have the answer because I'm out, unfortunately. And I could try to reach out to my former colleagues to see if anyone has any contacts to people who are in the NGSW program. But chances are, even if they were, they wouldn't talk to me because, I mean, I'm out. So I'm not on that team anymore. So, haha, so we're back. Today we are instead doing 30-06, but still on the NGSW program. Being able to talk to a few guys who are on the inside of the program, and I shall not name names, although I do appreciate my friend Zach, who is Brennan Herrera's lead gunsmith, and some of the chats with him, and also some other foreign guys. Starts with an R, if you know who you are. And one thing that I did hear that sort of differed from my projection on the NGSW was that a lot of guys saw the cartridge being the key of the NGSW. Absolutely, the cartridge is a key. A 13-inch barrel shooting that type of velocity, pushing that type of pressure, you can only do that with a specially designed cartridge. And my qualms on that is, how do you supply that when you have all of this ready set up? Is the juice worth the squeeze? A lot of those guys also said they don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. However, if the cartridge gets canned, a lot of them actually said that they felt that the NGSW, the rifle itself, would also go with it. I agree, but I don't think the rifle would entirely be disposed because, one, you can't give stuff like that out as military aid. You can scrap it, although that would raise some eyebrows. I've worked with Dermo in the past. But you could also caliber convert it and use your own ammunition. Or you can caliber convert it, or you could send it to a different country and have them caliber convert it. Again, the caliber conversion on the MCX is fairly easy. It's just a couple screws holding the barrel in place. It's something that you and I could do, but in the government entities, they would prefer to have someone trained, which is someone who went to a course and sat through some PowerPoints to deal with. I think it still opens up a window to caliber convert. Now, here's the big other question to the NGSW project, because it's not just the M7 that makes up the NGSW, it's also the sighting system, the XM158. The XM158, I think, is a very impressive system itself.
So all we need to do is press a button, and if you look through the optic, you'll see that there's a save symbol in the upper right-hand corner.
See it.
So go ahead and range a target.
Okay.
Once you have a target range, it'll prompt you if you'd like to save that target or if you'd like to discard it.
However, lasing targets on the battlefield nowadays is like signing your death warrant. So that's given birth to a whole new generation of snipers who are relearning how to mill things the old-fashioned way, or using, being good at nav. I used to teach land nav, and map recon is a big thing. Using map recon skills to figure out the distance is a very viable method. That said, the XM158 is a really interesting optic. And I think if there's anything that should be kept from it, potentially it's the XM158 optic. However, huge however here. Issuing optics to troops, you certainly saw, well, the US Army certainly saw an increase in marksmanship skills, much like going from the 1911 to the M9, you saw an increase of passing rates, going from iron sights to an optic, you increase the passing rate because it's just simpler to use. That being said, if you can't pull a trigger properly on an ACOG, I think the advantage that the XM158 gives to the soldier can only be so much if you don't have basic rifle marksmanship skills, i.e. if you can't press the trigger without moving the rifle, you can only go so far. On top of that, range estimation is not an easy thing if you're not trained upon it, and if lasing a target means that you could get shot, that is a major drawback in fighting a conventional war. That said, again, XM158 is a really interesting advancement in optical solutions, sighting solutions, and I don't want to take away from that, from that piece. I just don't think the other piece, the piece on the bottom, the XM7 or the M7, is as monumental of a shift for it if you cannot use generally supplied ammunition. So, where does it stand? I don't know. I think it would be interesting to watch to see if in the coming years, one, if we're able to supply the 6.8x51 cartridge. I think under peacetime conditions it would be significantly difficult. Even under wartime conditions, I think a more logical directive is to push out ammunition that our troops and allied troops can use. Because remember, as long as you supply an ally who is fighting, politically you have much less of a target drawn on your back if you're not missioning out American troops. So I think there is a greater priority to current stock of ammunition to be produced. I think there is less of a desire or less of a need that pushes us to marshal that many resources to further pushing this new round outside of potentially some, let's call them visionaries within the ranks who want to see that. Maybe they're seeing something that I'm not, but a large format rifle that provides less ammunition with advantages that may or may not, more like may not, match the current warfare doesn't seem like a logical way to push forward. It certainly is a more sexy way. It certainly would generate nice OER bullets. That's the officer evaluation report bullets. That's how you get promoted. But practical bullets, supplying X amount of rounds to X location, deconflicting certain logistical problems, opening new logistical supply routes. Those are the durable solutions, in my opinion, to winning a war, not a Wunderwaffe. And there's certain people in the 30s and the 40s who learned that the hard way when we pushed solid logistics and they tried to come up with new Wunderwaffe to fight us. So, yeah. And that goes, also that goes for the Soviet push back then too. Say what you want, the Soviet logistical system is a durable and interesting beast of just slamming rounds into place, and it actually worked. So, logistics, that's how you win wars. That's my opinion. What do you think? Write them down in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious about this one. But anyways, this video was released to predate our upcoming SIG Spear video. So if this one comes out before, maybe that's to generate some conversation. If it comes out after, it's just to tie up the conversation itself. I don't know which one's gonna go first. We'll just see you there. Bye-bye.